there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learnt an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths. And I'm Jill Tiny, and I'm delighted to say I am joined today by Rob Morgan, one of our collaborators, one of our members at Collaboration Global. So welcome, Rob. Lovely to see you today.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Thank you very much. It's not so sunny. It's beginning of July, usual British weather. And of course, we're coming out the other side of the lockdown. What's been happening for you and who are you locked down with at the moment, and what are you looking forward to?
My wife and my two children. So I've got Billy, who is 12 next week.
Oh, wow.
And Kyra, who's 10. Oh. And my wife, Tika, who is Indonesian.
I thought you were going to give her an age for a minute. I was going to say, don't do that. Ladies don't. Indonesian.
She's a lot younger than I am, though. So
you're punching above your weight there a little bit, Rob. Yeah, did you go to Indonesia? Is that where you met? Or?
Yeah, so we actually met. I was out there doing a scuba diving holiday, and she was working in the hotel that I was staying at. So
that's nice.
We met, and then we exchanged details at the end, and we corresponded, and then I went back out there again, and one thing led to another.
Romance, lovely. Yeah. Scuba diving, now that's something. Yeah, I've known you for a couple of years now at least. I don't think I connected the scuba diving with you. I think that's quite something I've never done.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I ever saw my husband be nervous about something. He'll jump off of high buildings, he'll do all sorts of abseiling and, let's have a go, let's fun. And he's in it. But then he did scuba diving and he was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Because it's a mindset thing, isn't it? To be able to go deep underwater and rely on something artificial other than yourself to support you to survive.
Yeah.
How did you get into scuba diving?
It was something I always fancied doing, and I actually signed up, and I went on a course at Barkingside Swimming Pool.
I know it well.
probably 25 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's a block of flats now.
And it just went from there. So I went and I learnt in the swimming pool, which was interesting. Some things that you wouldn't want to see in the swimming pool.
Dear, don't tell me.
And then went on some holidays in the Red Sea.
Yeah.
And then just started making my own holidays. So I went out to the Far East, to Thailand, and did some diving out there. And then somebody recommended this place in Indonesia that I met my wife at. So, but the really interesting thing is, I find when I'm diving, I'm just find it easy to get into a meditative state. So there's nothing really going on to distract you, and I just find it really easy to fall into that state where we all have our best ideas. So, when we're on a walk or when we're in the shower and there's nothing much going on.
I like that.
And I got that from scuba. I don't know whether I actually realised at the time what it was, but I just loved it. And I still do, but I've not done it. It's probably 4 or 5 years since I've been diving.
I get the impression it's a bit like skiing. It's once you get the hang of it, it's quite addictive, and you don't want to stop. So maybe one day I'll give that a go. But I get the meditative state because it's being at one with nature, isn't it? It's being part of the current and seeing the wildlife. And so, okay, you have a brilliant idea when you're how many fathoms down. What do? You can't, you just got to remember it, haven't you?
Yeah.
Quick, give me a piece of paper.
But it kind of works in the way that I see people change. So it's not so much about writing things down, but if you have an insight, it's like an update to the machine code in your brain.
Yeah.
And once you've had that insight,
You can't unsee it.
You can't really unsee it, and you can't put words on it. Sometimes it's not something that it makes a change, and you see things differently afterwards. I guess
it's another piece of the jigsaw, isn't it? That you kind of just build on, depending on whatever you're thinking. But I think it's the clarity, and I want to talk about clarity a bit later on. But before we do, tell us, what's your day job? It's like they say on these TV shows, isn't it? Being a presenter, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And while you're doing one thing, your being is part of that doing, isn't it? So explain to us what it is. What's your day job?
So I've had my own business for about 5 or 6 years now, and it's interesting because my business has always been about helping people to perform better, helping leaders to lead better, and working with individuals on a coaching on a one-on-one basis and working with groups of people. But the way that I do it has completely switched in the last, 3 years. So we'll talk about clarity a bit later. But I used to be a person that thought that if there was something to do, there was a process you could follow, and if you followed the process, you would get to the end result that you were looking for. But the way that I see things now is processes are great, usually until you get human beings involved in them. And once you start getting humans involved in them, they don't always go the way that you think that they're going to go. So my focus these days is much more around skills and traits that are innate in the people that I work with. And so rather than working on the basis that I can teach somebody something new and they can go away and use that in whatever it is that they do, I'm looking much more for how can I help them to bring out what's already within them. How can I help them to get the barriers that stop their innate skills, knowledge, experience from coming through? So that's very much the area that I work, well, it looks to me as if as we come out of this kind of pandemic stage, that in business and in that's kind of the area where I focus on in my business. What's going to make the real difference, the difference between companies failing and thriving, is going to be the quality of the leadership in those organisations.
Gosh, yeah.
So I've been working very hard at putting together some leadership development, and I don't even like calling it training, but it's leadership development ideas that I can take into reasonable sized businesses, work with the senior management team, possibly on a one-on-one basis and possibly in groups, but also working with the future leaders in the organisation and helping them to develop and bring out those innate talents that leadership's all about.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot at Collaboration Global about people's inner genius, their sort of natural, as you say, innate. A skill can be learned, but there's something in you that's your mojo, your kind of reason for being. And what I love when you say you help people kind of find that space, so you can see where are the next leaders coming from. Well, who's got this leadership quality, this magical thing, and people go, oh no, it's not me. And sometimes they think it's not them, and I was one of those people. It's like, oh no, I'm a supporter, I'm a nurturer, I'm in the background. I'm not the one at the front of the room, or I'm not going to do any of that leadership stuff. But when it gets unpacked, and people realise that actually you could do it, and I think you should do it, and I think you're ready for it, then it becomes very exciting, doesn't it? Because you can kind of feel them grow before your very eyes. And I know in our community, when one of the classics is that we ask people to present to the community, and a lot of people are, oh no, I can talk for a minute when I'm doing my pitch at a networking meeting, but I couldn't possibly do half an hour. And at one point we used to do an hour, so we'd ask people to stand up and talk about themselves and their business for a whole hour. And it's like, whoa, it wasn't a sales pitch. It was just sharing what you are passionate about in what you're doing. Yeah. And I love that moment when people get excited by doing that, because they've kind of stepped up to the plate and gone, I can do this. I can. And this kind of thing that's within them that you probably spot with your clients, and that we spot with people in Collaboration Global. It's like when your passion is big enough, everything else that was a problem, your shyness, I'm introverted, I've never done it before, all of those things can be, pushed to one side or removed in order to get the job done. So it's
really interesting, because I had quite a long corporate career before I started my own business. And when I look back on it, certainly in the earlier years of it, I wasn't really in touch with, I think where you lead from the present moment, and it's about getting in touch with, you might call it wisdom or common sense, and being prepared to take action from what that wisdom or common sense tells you to do. Realize you don't get it right all the time, but it's to be honest, we learn more when we get it wrong and we fail, although there's not much of a culture of failure in most of the businesses that I worked in.
No.
But when I look back, certainly in the early years of that, I kind of had this attitude that I couldn't believe that I'd got to where I'd got to, and I was doing what I was doing. And a lot of what, the thinking that was going on was, oh, what if I get found out? What if people find out that I can't really do this? I'm just, doing it from a
faking it. We all have that, though. If people say they've never suffered from imposter syndrome, I say you're lying, because everybody's had it at one point. So I know exactly what you mean.
It's interesting, because where I see people now, and the people that I work with, that they have everything within them that they need to do whatever it is that they want.
Yeah.
But sometimes they don't see it themselves, and it's helping them to see it themselves, helping them to get closer to understanding reality. So we sit here, we take in lots of information through all of our senses, and then our brain goes to work on that, and it creates a picture of reality. And everybody creates a different picture of reality.
Yeah.
But I find that the closer that we can get to what the reality actually is, if there is anything that reality actually is, the closer we can get to it, the better decisions we make, the better able we are to navigate our way through whatever comes up in front of us. And that's really the philosophy that I bring to my coaching and to my leadership development training and all of those sort of things, is that what we're looking to do is we're looking to get people more present in the moment and as close as possible to understanding what the reality of the situation is. And from there, if they haven't got too much thinking going on, they can get in touch with their wisdom, and wisdom will guide them as to what to do next. But there's so much, what if I step up and I get it wrong? Or, what if I get it wrong and my boss decides that he doesn't want me in the organisation anymore? And there's so many things that get in the way.
Well, I find a lot of people have this habit, very bad habit, of creating a story around something. It's like, oh, so-and-so didn't ring me. Well, they must have the hump with me. There must be something wrong. Or I sent that email 3 days ago and I've not had a reply. Well, they're just doing it because they're being stroppy. And you make up this story that is absolute fabrication. You have no idea. And your gut instinct would tell you one thing, but your brain is going at 1,000,000 miles an hour to tell you something that you're leaning towards, this negative space of, oh, it's because of that. Oh, and you kind of justify it and try and make reasons for it. I know a classic, my mum used to say to me, God bless her, she doesn't ring me because she doesn't know what I'm doing and she doesn't want to disturb me. I said, well, if I can't get to the phone, I won't answer it. So then I'm busy, but you could ring me, and if I can answer it, I'll answer it, and I'll be glad to have a phone call from my mum. But she couldn't. She made up the story of like, oh, well, it's this time, she's probably having a dinner. Oh, well, it's this time, she's probably still working. Oh, it's this. So she would literally never ring me, because this story was always going on in her head all the time. And we do that with ourselves. We make up all the excuses under the sun while we don't have to take action. It's not my fault, nothing to do with me. I know I could, but it's because of him. He looked at me in that funny way, so obviously I can't go and do what I was going to do. And it all goes on and on and on. So one of the tricks I like to use is it true? Is it false? Or don't you know? So if you're thinking about something, is it true? I'm not sure. Is it false? It could be. I don't know. So don't allow yourself to go down the negative. Just, if you don't know, you don't know. And can you do anything about it?
Yeah.
So if you haven't had a response from a phone call or an email, then bring them again or email them again. Or if you sent an email, then make a phone call. It's just logic and keeping things unemotional can give you access to the what ifs. So, I've never done scuba diving. I've always been quite worried about it. I'm a bit claustrophobic. What if you could? Would that not be a great thing to do? Well, yeah,
reminds
probably.
me of a story that Michael Neal tells. The American, he's an American life coach, but he lives in Hollywood, and he'd always thought of himself as being a shy person, and he just thought to himself one day, "What if that's not true? What if I'm not shy?" And he and his wife had got an invite to an Oscars party, and he said, "I always used to hate having to go along to these things."
Yeah.
And he said, we went along, and for the first time ever, my wife had to drag me away because I always told myself I was shy, but you kind of make up the story, and then the story becomes real.
Exactly. And it's what you choose to be. I remember somebody saying to me not that long ago, oh, it's all right for you, Jill, you're an extrovert. You can go and talk to anybody. It's all right for you, as though I was made that way.
Yeah.
And I remember going to my very first networking event going, oh, it was dire. I didn't want to be there. It was too early in the morning. And I wanted to get out of it. And I spent 6 weeks trying to get out of it, even though I knew that for the sake of my business, I had to plow on and be there.
Yeah.
Little did I know that was the very beginning of my journey to me becoming an international speaker. Because I was put in the position again and again and again where it's like, could you speak to this group of people? Could you teach this group of people? Would you like to be a consultant? Would you like to be an area director? Would you like to... And I kind of went through this phase of not saying no, because I was kind of pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, now I'm this extrovert. Where did that come from? I chose every step of the way that I wasn't going to be that scared person who went on day one feeling the angst, feeling the upset, feeling agony at not wanting to actually do it. But knowing my logic said, come on, you've got to get on with it. Just get on with it. Do it. And as a result of that, I had the most amazing time. You know, I've been to Malaysia, been to Singapore, been to Los Angeles, all through networking. And it would have been so easy to find an excuse not to.
It's really interesting, the limitations that we put on ourselves that stop us from doing stuff that just would transform our, you know, our world, our business, our life, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I first started doing the coaching, I used to do a lot of assessments with people.
Mm-hmm.
So measuring EQ and DISC and motivators and all those.
Yeah. Enneagrams.
And but it looks to me now as if all that tells you is what somebody thinks they are. Doesn't tell you anything about them as what they actually are and what they're capable of.
It's a nice little label that we can hide behind.
Yeah.
It says I'm an S. It says I'm an I, so I can't do that, and I'm not really very good at that. So I'm going to stick to what I know, and in my little fur-lined rut, I'm going to stay in my little rut here and enjoy myself.
Yeah.
It's debilitating. I don't take any label. No label should define you. It's something that is, interesting to. That's my subconscious talking, or however the profiling tool has been used. And I think there are sometimes it's useful to have a profiling tool if you just quickly want to gauge the team in front of you. If you've got no idea who they are, if you've not had a chance to work out their personalities. But when you understand profiles, you can pretty much spot just by people's body language what they're going to be like. But it's the untapped stuff that you're talking about. Exactly.
So it's, again, interesting. When I did my MBA, which is 20 odd years ago now, they did Myers-Briggs as the assessment. And I came out as an introvert on Myers-Briggs, and for years I thought,
that was me.
I love to do that, but I can't do that. I'm an introvert. It's I don't see myself as an introvert anymore.
Good. That's good. It's funny how we play with language. Like people, really bugs me when people say, there's a meeting, or we'll go down the pub, I'll try and make it. Try. It's like it's an excuse. Why don't you choose positively, or choose, don't give yourself an excuse, because you've only got one life. You need to live it on purpose and not by accident. Not kind of backhanded, like, I think maybe I'll try means it's not going to happen. And I don't know about you, but I learned that as a kid, because your mum would say, we'll wait, we'll see. Well, that means no. Really fast, because it's just the language that we use can really disempower us or empower us. So it's and when people kind of, I remember this one guy saying, it's all right for you, you're an extrovert. I'm like, wow. It's just, am I? I didn't think about myself as an extrovert. Maybe I am. I choose to be. There are times when I don't want to go anywhere or see anyone. God bless lockdown. I've actually had quite a nice time. Thank you very much. Sitting at home, it's been fun. Albeit horrendous things that are going on around me. But and I never thought I could content myself with being in one space, because I've always been curious and let's go out, let's do this, let's see here, and I'm curious about people, which potentially makes me an extrovert. But I think I love connecting. So that's my big thing, is I connect with people. But lockdown has taught me that I can be content in my own company. And I thought that wasn't possible. What have you learnt about yourself in this whole period of time?
It's been really interesting, because in the past I would probably describe myself as continually anxious about things. So if there was something that I could worry about, I would be worrying about it. But it just looks different to me now. It looks, there are a lot of things that I could worry about. My wife works in the NHS. My kids, well, at the start they were obviously going to school. Now they haven't been to school for 3 months.
Yeah.
And won't be going back until September by the look of things.
Mm.
My mum, who lives 250 miles away and is 90, as it was told to lock down, and I said, yeah, good luck getting my mum to stay in. I could be worrying that she might catch this, and if she catches this, I could be worrying about my business, because I certainly lost a lot of business at the start of the of the outbreak. But it seems to me that we have this fantastic brain, and we can create these really rich pictures of what the future looks like. And that can be, we can make that brilliant, or we can make it awful. But it can really seem like it's real to us. And it's when it seems like it's real to us that we get the kind of stressful and the anxious feelings about it. Now, I know that some things might happen. At some point, I will have to face, my mum will pass away at some point. There may well be things that come along that impact me in my business. Life has a tendency to throw things at us when we're least expecting them. But if I sit here and worry about them, what I don't have is that resilience and that connection to wisdom that I have when those things actually happen. And, I'm 63. There's quite a few things that have happened already that have come along that have knocked me, but I've survived them and I've got through them. And it's, what will happen will happen. But when it happens, you have the opportunity to reach into yourself and reach to that wisdom, to that resilience, that creativity, all of those good things that just help you navigate that at the time.
And of course, when people are susceptible, don't know how to choose powerfully, don't know how to access that wisdom and that resilience, anxiety becomes very, very real. Yeah. And then that can trip into, other mental health issues. Yeah. That it's like the thin end of the wedge, or the beginning of the spiral. And it's very easy to kind of worry yourself into a state of, the whole world's gone to hell in a handcart kind of thing. So it's understanding, and I'm assuming because of your experience of scuba diving and the meditative state that you found yourself in, that is probably a practice that you use now?
Yes. I don't really practice meditation, but I find it quite easy to... It's really... It's not a technique, but I'm much better at recognizing when I've got a lot of thinking going on. And we're all thinking all of the time, and there's thoughts that come and go, and they lead to feelings, and that feeling might be stress, or it might be anxiety, or it might be exhilarate. We all have thoughts that lead to those feelings. And those feelings, we think, are telling us about the world and telling us about what's happening to us. But actually, all that they're telling us about are the thoughts that we have in our head at that point in time. And just being able to recognize that, it's not about controlling thought, because I don't know if you've ever tried, but I don't think there's any way that we can control what we think. But being able to recognize that I've got that feeling, and there's that thought that's going on that links to that. The best analogy that I've heard for it is that it's like a station, and the thoughts come into the station and go out of the station. And sometimes we jump on a thought, and if we jump on a thought and that thought leads to anxious feelings, then it's very easy for that to spiral quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where, kind of big anxiety builds up. But it's also, if you recognize the thought when it comes, it's easy just to let that thought go. And because there'll always be another thought along in a minute.
Yeah.
And it's like I don't know if you've ever done surfing, but it's waiting for the wave to come along, and you can jump on that wave.
Yeah.
And if the wave's not a very good wave, you can jump off it again, and you can wait for the next one to come along.
Yeah. What I find interesting is how people, and I've seen this demonstrated in Collaboration Global, where people can be reconnected to a feeling by thinking back to an incident that may have happened months ago, years ago even, and they can reconnect with that thought. That thought takes them into that feeling so profoundly that they have physical manifestation of that. So their skin becomes flushed, they may become a bit tearful, their breathing goes up.
Yeah.
And then by the person that's working with them, helping them to unpack those thoughts and how to kind of dissipate the emotion, they're not cancelling it or anything, but they're actually taking the sting out of the emotion by understanding the thoughts more effectively. And you can see the person in front of you totally transformed. The face becomes clear, the breathing becomes easier. And you think, oh, this is a bit of a trick. This is a bit like a hypnotherapist on a stage doing a little fancy thing going on here. But then I said to this particular lady that had gone through this exercise, an hour later, 2 hours later, 5 hours later, how are you feeling? And she's like, well, I can sit here and think about it now, and I don't want to kill her anymore. This person that she was so upset with, so angry with, that her whole body was like furious. Yeah. And she said, no, I'm good. I'm going to go and ring her in a minute and have a chat and sort it all out. Like, wow, just the power of the mind to understand how to release all the negative stuff. And I think it's policing what's going on in your head. Policing it. Is it true? Is it false? Or don't know? You can then, is this a negative thing? How negative am I? So I did an exercise once, walked from my house to the station, 5-minute journey. And I counted how many negative thoughts. Just let the thoughts come and go as I wanted to. And there was something like, 15 negative thoughts on a 5-minute journey. I was shocked. And it was silly little things like, the curb's broken, that's paving slab's broken. I wonder why the council hasn't fixed that yet. Negative. I don't like her curtains in that house. That looks a bit negative. And it was like bing, 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 bing. And I'm thinking, what am I like with the big stuff? So, and then another day I did look at the positive thoughts, and the positive weren't as big as the negative, but I thought, well, I need to relay that so that it's, because I want to feed myself with good stuff, and your thoughts are as important as the food that you put in your body in order for your wellness to be able to thrive. Yeah. Because if you're negative and you're upset and you're anxious, what's that doing to your insides? Your stomach, your ulcers and all the kind of things. And some people would say that a lifetime of adversity and worry would create a cancer. Now, I don't know if that's true. That's just, I've got no proof of that at all. But it kind of makes a little bit of logic for me that if you're constantly at this pent-up, angry, stressed out, it's got to have an impact on your body. Yeah. Your body can't live like that all the time.
Yeah, it's. I've read somewhere that we have this the fight-flight mechanism, but it's only really designed to be used, once every 2 weeks at most, but people are using that all the time. They're running on adrenaline. They're creating this serotonin, and it's absolute killer. Yeah. It really, literally kills people.
I heard somebody say she came into a meeting once and she's really stressed and really upset, and she's, I've just been in the post office and I've had to queue up for nearly an hour. It's been the worst day of my life. If that's the worst day of your life, you're doing all right. Just queuing up in the post office, calm down. But you weren't there. What were you doing? Queuing up in the post office. You know,
It's interesting. The way I see things now is that mental health is innate, and things like stress and anxiety, they're like the rumble strips on the road. They're there to tell us that there's something going on that is disrupting our our ability to feel good about stuff.
Yeah.
And if we recognize them as that,
Feel that little bump in the road. I like that. Rumble strips on the road. Yeah,
rather than jumping on the thought, because it's when you jump on the thought that that's when it starts to build, and
I do blame social media for a lot of this. So there's so much angst, in the Twitter sphere, when people just kind of jump on the bandwagon in an anonymous way, and then they're wishing ill on other people, and they're condemning people. And like, you don't know all the facts. Why are you doing this? You can't possibly know all the facts. Facebook's the same. There's so many of these blast. Oh yeah, everyone, you've got 50 comments about this video, and then comment 51. Yeah, it's fake. I've just Googled it, and it's not a real thing. And then 50 people have gone. Like, wow. But it's interesting, isn't it, how easily we all get sucked into this tribe mentality of jumping on things and being negative. When people look back historically to this time, it's this sort of tribe warfare of being negative about so many things. Let's have the good news for change. That's what I like, when you have the good news websites and the podcasts that are just giving you good news. What a lift, what a difference. Changing the subject slightly, but still keeping the same, I do want to talk about, I know you've done presentations at Collaboration Global on a few occasions, and you hold this book up. And how you tell us that it changed the whole way that you view, if not your business, then even further. So tell us about the good old Jamie Smart and clarity.
Yeah, so I've worked out it was less than 3 years ago.
Okay.
That a friend recommended a book to me, and it was a book called The Little Book of Clarity by a guy called Jamie Smart. And so I picked it up. I've always read lots of books, as you can probably see in the background.
Yeah, I love it.
And I kind of forced myself to read all the way through it, and maybe some of the arguments seemed to me, oh yeah, well that's obvious, isn't it? And some of the argument was, it just all seemed a bit woo to me. And I've talked already about coming from a process background, and if there's a way of doing things, there's a process you can follow. Yeah. But I saw enough in it to pick it up again about a couple of weeks later and read through it again. And so clarity is the state where, and I've already described it in terms of leadership, it's the state where we're present in the moment. We understand that either we haven't got a lot of thinking going on, or we can see our thinking for what it is, and we can see what's true and what's kind of made up and it's not productive, not helpful to the situation. And from that place of clarity, we can make better decisions. We can see things more clearly. We tend to be more innovative, more creative. We tend to bring out, as I say, all of the kind of the things that I admire in leadership, the things that are things that I think are innate in us. But when we're in that place of clarity, they're kind of closer to the surface and easier to bring out. And so clarity is based on a philosophy called the Three Principles, which came out from, there's a guy called Sydney Banks in Canada in the 1970s who had one of these, how would you describe it? An enlightenment experience.
All right, one of those.
One of the, the whole Charlton Heston
Revelation,
with flashing
yeah.
lights and all that sort of thing. But he then went away and tried to put words about what he'd experienced and tried to put it into language that people understood. So basically what he's saying, there are three principles in terms of how we operate as human beings. And those three principles are thought, so the thinking that comes through us, mind, which is like the intelligence of the universe, so the thing that makes acorns grow into oak trees and helps if we cut ourselves, heals it without us really having to think too much about it. And some people will call that God or spirit or whatever. And then the other is consciousness, which is just what allows us to experience the thought and the mind bit.
Yeah.
So I've also heard it described as thought is the movie, mind's the projector, and the screen is consciousness. So it's kind of projecting it all onto
that. Reminds me of the old NLP technique. I don't know if you've done any NLP, when you flash the images across the screen. But I guess that's kind of based on that, isn't it? It's thought, mind, and consciousness. Yeah, I like that.
I mean, the NLP, the difference between Three Principles and NLP is kind of reverse engineering.
Okay.
So it looks at the things that are stopping people from doing whatever it is that they want to do, and then it goes back and reverse engineers it together. And I've got no difficulty with whatever modality people use to help people to move forward. And
what works for some doesn't work for others.
To me, it just seems like
fitted.
I don't have to do it's the way that I work is I get a connection with somebody. I calibrate them to make sure that I understand what it is that they're telling me. Because I mean, the thing about words is it's very easy to make your own interpretation of what people tell you.
Yeah, and to make up your own story.
To think that you understand what it is that they're telling you. So that calibration piece is asking them questions, making sure that I understand what it is that they're actually saying, not necessarily the words that they first use. And calibrating myself so that I'm in that place of clarity, because if I'm in that place of clarity, the direction that I go in with them comes from wisdom. It doesn't come from all the thinking that's going on in my head.
Yeah, you're not going to go, well, we've done step one, so let's do step two.
And then there's a little bit of education. Education, the Latin root of educate is educere, which means drawing out from within. So
I like that.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Not the way that we educate our children, unfortunately, but
no, there is a lady called Angela Mayer who has, in the United States, she's managed to invoke in, 300,000 schools across the States, the Genius Hour. And it's an hour where the teacher doesn't teach anything. It's up to the children as an exploratory hour to find out what their genius is.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's beautiful, isn't it? And they're working on themselves to find out because normally you do this in school. We are imparting knowledge to you, but when it's coming from the other direction,
Mm.
it's just lovely. And as a ex-teacher myself, knowing the children in the classroom and knowing what their skill sets are, and just finding that one thing that kind of brings out their genius, that's a good job.
Going back to the things that we think, of the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. I always thought that I wasn't really a creative person. But I love I love being creative now.
Yeah.
It just seems like if you get, I think it probably came from, you know, doing art at school and not being very good at drawing, and they can't do that. But I look at places where I'm creative now, and creativity around my business, creativity with just in the way that I live my life.
Yeah.
But that all comes from within. That's kind of one of these innate things that you can suppress it if you don't think you're creative. You tend to suppress it.
It's the same as if you've been told when you're a kid you can't sing. You think, oh, I won't sing in public, or I won't sing, you know. And it's just one person's opinion, and you can change. You can transfer all of it.
Unless it's Simon Cowell's opinion, in which case.
Okay, you have to pay attention then, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, you still don't have to believe him.
No.
Yeah, it is interesting that I forgot what I was going to say then. It was, I think this creativity that you speak of, I mean, a lot of people have rediscovered their creativity through lockdown, haven't they? There's opportunities to try something new and do something new, and how we always thought, you know, oh, I can't do that. That's what I was going to say, is the creativity when somebody cooks, for example. You can tell the difference by taste of a meal that's been cooked with love and a meal that's just been put together.
Yeah.
Because that love is that innate creativity that makes the dinner taste wonderful. So if you're doing it, my mum always said, you can't bake bread if you're in a bad mood, because it will come through in the dough. You know, you have to be in, although you've got to do all this business, it is about, you know, kneading it with love and helping it to be the best loaf of bread it can be. And I think that's the same with people, isn't it? If you come to people in that space of love, no matter how angry they are, how upset they are, how down on themselves they are, if you come to them with love, they're like, ooh, and there's that opportunity for them to listen to what you might have to say.
Yeah.
And that's why at Collaboration Global, I'm passionate about, that word gets bandied around a lot, doesn't it? But I am, because it's like, if people can come together with love, with caring, with kindness, with compassion, you know, things like, as we were talking about earlier, the Black Lives Matter mission, movement.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be an easier space to be? Politics, wouldn't that be? You imagine politicians talking to each other with love, kindness, compassion, caring. You know, because it's not happening at the moment, because we're in a society that is taught around the capitalist agenda, the monetary system, the fear factor of you haven't got enough, there's not enough to go around, you have to earn more, you have to make more profit, you have to consume, you have to, you know, all of these things that are damaging on so many different levels. And all we have to do is wipe all that away and get some clarity on what's important in people's lives.
And it's it goes back to the different realities that people live in. That I'm sure that whether the people are on the left or the right of politics, that somewhere in their heart they're there for a good reason, and they believe that what they do is going to be the best thing for themselves, maybe, but also for the people who support them. But yeah, sorry.
That's all right. I was just going to say about politicians. I believe they go into politics for the right reasons, but I think there is a deep-rooted system that they get sucked into, and it's very hard to go against the grain. And I think this is an opinion and not fact, but it just feels that the majority of politics is just run by money. and where the money is where the power is, which is where the coercion happens, and where people have to give up their altruistic endeavours of helping the nation and helping the constituency and helping the individuals, because it's like, oh no, we can't do that because that person's paying that much money, and it all gets very complicated. And I think if only we could have a clean sweep, clean slate and start again. That's a whole other podcast, Rob Morgan. Let's not go down that route.
We'll do that next week.
Definitely. So just to finish off, we didn't really start in the beginning about talking about Collaboration Global from your perspective. Now we've kind of gone online. It's a different beast to what it was before. How have you found that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, one thing is it's probably enabled me to get to more of the meetings. I just love the space it gives you just to kind of let go of everything else and relax into being with a group of interesting people, interesting ideas, not everything that I agree with, everything that everybody says, but people who are prepared to. One of the greatest skills that I think that we all have, and very few of us use it to its best extent, is listening. Lots of people listen, but they're listening in anticipation of their moment to be able to jump in and say something.
Yeah.
But if we really listen to what other people say, it just takes you into a different place, a place where you understand that you might not agree with them, but you can understand, you can see things from different perspectives. I mean, listening is obviously critical. If I'm doing coaching, it's really important to me to listen. But actually, there are times when you listen for the feeling, you don't listen for the words.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense at all.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the things that I thought was going to be a problem for us, in that when we have our face-to-face meetings, the energy is palpable. You can feel the energy in the room. And I'm thinking, how is that going to happen across a screen? You can't possibly feel that energy. But it is still there, because the culture of love, connection and abundance is coming together, and people aren't coming together to sort of roll their sleeves up and go, right, so who can I collaborate with? Who would be useful for me? It's holding the space for what's possible, and the potential for collaboration, but also learning from each other, helping each other, finding out how you can support, connect, get together and just see what's possible. And I know from what you're doing in your business, you've connected with collaborators past and collaborators present in order to support you in what you're doing. And I know full well that you would have been doing the same for them. Yeah. Not only are you going there to pick their brains and go, so tell me about this, you're going, oh, I've had an idea about what you were talking about. And it's just being in that space of, there's no right or wrong. There's no blame. There's no, I know better than you. And there will be undoubtedly people that know an awful lot more than anybody, and there's people that think they know nothing, but they have their own innate wisdom. And when that is released, then they will say something that they think is, well, everyone knows that, and they'll just say it, and somebody else will be like, oh, that's profound. I hadn't even thought about that. And that's what I love about holding that space for people to just truly try stuff out, have a go, and just put it out there. And that's what these podcasts are about, is getting to know you at a deeper level. Because if we're at a meeting, quite often you're sitting there, the listening one. You're listening, and you'll say something right at the end that will be really profound and really beautiful, but people don't know much about you. So now they can come and they can hear what you're saying. They can hear about your style around coaching. They can understand what your how you got to where you are and what you are passionate about. And they can delve more into who you are. So now they're going to go, oh, Rob Morgan, I think I need to have a one-to-one with him. Or actually, Rob Morgan, I didn't know he did that. I actually do something like that. So we should talk to each other, and so on. So it's different to when it was offline. And I'm not saying the offline stuff will never come back again, but I'm really pleased to say that the online stuff is as powerful, and it does have beautiful repercussions that are happening as we speak. So thank you for coming to the meetings, because obviously if people didn't turn up, then we wouldn't be able to create that magic. But it is easy now. We don't have to jump on a train. So if somebody is watching this at the moment and they're interested in meeting Rob at a meeting, they're always on the last Tuesday of the month. You can find us on Eventbrite, or you can go to the website collaborationglobal.org. Rob, if somebody wanted to contact you directly, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Probably by email. So my email is very simple. It's rob@robmorgan.co. No .uk, just .co.
I like to be different.
That'll find me. And
brilliant.
I was going to say, the other thing I love about the meetings is, so sometimes you go along to networking meetings and you've got a lot of people hunting, a lot of people who are there just to sell. They're not really interested in anybody else there. The Collaboration Global meetings, people are there to learn, and it's kind of interesting. We've got inbuilt in us kind of a bullshit detector.
Yeah.
And people spot the guys that are just there for themselves very quickly. But there's none of that at Collaboration Global. Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on this podcast, Rob. It's been another fascinating conversation. I really love it. I love where you're going with your business. I love the fact that it is about unpacking people's innate wisdom and helping them to be our leaders of the future, and our leaders of the future that are not afraid to have that bit of woo-woo, that it's not all about the process. And I'm glad that you've come to that space as well. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today.
I've loved talking to you.
Thank you very much. Take care.